going to be the City of Port Richey Community Redevelopment Agency Board meeting, Tuesday, January 11th. This time, I'd like to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chairman Scott Tremblay.
Here.
Member Jenny Sorrell.
Here.
Member Todd McClary.
Here.
Member Tom Kinsella.
Here.
Member Linda Rodriguez.
Here.
City Attorney James Matthew.
Here.
City Manager John Duke.
Here.
Thank you. This time we're going to open up for comments from our general public. I have a sign-up sheet. What's that? Oh, we need the, we'll do the
Motion to
minutes.
approve the board meeting
Second.
minutes.
Okay. We have a
Second.
motion. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. We're moving on to comments from the general public. Nobody signed up. There's a few people here. By show of hands, would anyone like to speak? Seeing no hands, we're going to move on to any comments from our city manager, Mr. Duke.
Nothing to add, sir.
Comments from the board. I'm going to start.
I have none.
I know we've had several discussions or heard in the news and everything else about the recent public audit. I'd like for a future meeting to have an agenda item where we discuss that audit in a little bit greater detail. I know there's been a lot of back and forth on it, so I think we should add that as part of an agenda item going forward.
Okay. I guess we start. Does everyone here have a copy of the audit? Do you guys see any need to discuss it?
Oh, I don't see anything wrong with this.
Okay.
No.
Would you like to discuss it?
No.
Okay. Would you like to add it for discussion?
I would, only because give our citizens an opportunity for them to say something about it as well.
Okay. So by consensus, can we just add that to our next CRA meeting?
I'll make-
Agree.
Yeah, it's done.
I'll put it on the agenda.
And was that all you had, Mr. McClary?
Yeah, we'll save it for the next meeting, because is the next meeting after the next council meeting, or are we a month from now?
The next scheduled meeting is in March. We can add one.
I'd like to add one in 2 weeks if we can, to kind of review this. Obviously, it's a fairly hot item for our citizens and in the media right now, so I really would like to get ahead of this and really discuss our response to the audit, as well as our plan going forward for that. So if we could set a meeting after the next council meeting for the CRA to discuss this in more detail.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
By consensus, then?
Yes.
Yes.
I'll put it together.
Well, council understands, for council meetings, Mr. Dude sets the agenda, but for here, you do, so, you just said it.
Well, then I'm not asking his
That's right.
permission, I'm saying it.
You can just set it, yeah. at any
I'll
time.
shuffle the papers.
I had some things along those lines, but I'd rather wait and discuss it. The only other thing that I was going to add is there was some media attention. I did respond. I wanted my response. I gave everyone a copy here. I wanted to see if I could have a motion to just enter this in the minutes so the general public can see what my response was. To the
Motion to enter Scott Tremblay's letter to the news reporter.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, if I may enter this as an exhibit. And I'm not looking to have it published, but just make it part of the record so the general public can see it.
Yes.
Thank
Is this
you.
my copy?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And that's all I had, Councilwoman Searle.
I'm fine, thank you. Fine, thank you.
We're going to move on to the board business. At this time, the first item is going to be the approval of phase 1 construction cost estimates. Pass that to Mr. Duke for introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Matt Ivy with Ayers Engineering is with us this evening. I know you had questions and concerns in our last CRA board meeting, so I wanted to have Mr. Ivy join us. He can also give us some updates on FDOT, on Duke Energy, and some of the progress they've made there. I know he's also had conversation with one of the business owners who may be integral to what we're going to try to do. And so, Mr. Ivy, if you could join us and bring us up to speed.
Thank you, John. My name is Matthew Ivy. I'm an engineer with Ayers Associates. Just to give you guys a heads up on what's going on out there. Can you raise the microphone? Sorry. Apologize. Can you hear me now? Well, I guess first I want to talk about the plan revisions that are going to be necessitated on our last meeting, talking about moving the sidewalk keeping it on the west side of the Old Post. I had met with the owner of Guild Dogs and talked about the possibility of needing an easement, and he seemed to be very amenable to that. We've done, looking at the plans, we've made some revisions, and it looks like we'll be able to actually fit the sidewalk within the right of way, so an easement most likely will not be needed for the sidewalk, but that will be able to stay on the west side of Old Post. There was also discussion about the sidewalk being on the north side of Treadway. That would necessitate filling in the swales, so to alleviate the permitting requirements, I'm proposing to leave the sidewalk on the south side of Treadway. That did have some parking concerns that were brought up. However, the owner of Field Dogs does own the parcel next to the Pirate Bar and would be amenable to using that for parking as well. So that seems to be a beneficial situation where we will be able to move forward on that. We are responding to a small set of comments from DOT. We plan on getting those plans back out to them next week. Duke is finalizing their preliminary design, and so we should be able to have those plans finalized and sent out by the end of next week to all those parties. What else do we need to get an update on?
LED.
Okay, yes. Working with Duke, all the new products that they are using going forward, whether it be for lease or sale, are LED products. So although our code does say that no LEDs are required, I don't see how we would be able to improve this area without amending that code. All the new products for lighting are LED, they're more energy efficient, they last longer, and it just seems like in order to make this as safe and vibrant as an area as we want it to be, I believe LEDs are the way to go.
I had a question about that. It was a legal question.
Sure.
Can we change the code as a city, but not citywide, only as it relates to the WOD for lighting? That's going to be a codification change by the city, correct?
Yes.
If I may add, I don't think there is any state in the nation or any public entity that isn't going to LED
Right.
from an engineering perspective. If we're going to change it, I think we should just update our code, because having an incandescent only code for lighting is mid-80s maybe, I think.
It's antiquated.
Yeah, so in order to bring Port Richey into at least the year 2000, I think we should really start addressing our codes in terms of site lighting and possibly some other codes as well, but we'll at least start with LED lighting for site lighting, because I can't even, in my professional life, I can't even put in non-LED lighting anymore for site lights.
Well, we can't get replacement for them anyway,
You'd be hard pressed.
Maybe on the black market.
Yeah.
The
can we?
question,
I'll call this weekend.
Yeah, exactly.
well, the question that I have is whether or not we can put this on as well for the next meeting, but not the CRA. That would have to go on the regular council meeting.
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying about
It would be a
CRA.
council code.
From incandescent to LED.
Well, I presume you could change the code, I don't know, I'd have to look. I presume you could also make it specific to an area if you wanted to, but you might want to do the whole city. I don't know.
I would do the whole city unless,
I'm amenable to either, but I just want to know what we need to do to do
If
that.
you're asking me, that'd be a city council issue.
Okay.
Just curious, doesn't Duke Energy, all the new lights they put in 4 years ago as a city manager, then they were all LEDs, aren't they?
What was put out there on the.
They were all LEDs, right?
Yeah, 'cause it
Duke
was
Energy
like-
put in
I know,
LEDs,
I
that
know,
wasn't a
right.
problem then.
That's what they're
Okay, so
proposing.
you read the code, says no LED?
Staff read the code.
Oh.
WOD
Oh.
specifically says no LED.
Oh, just the WOD?
Yeah. I don't know about the rest of the city code, but the WOD code does.
Ah, okay, well, that answers the mayor's question, so it's just in the WOD.
But that's why I was asking about
Yeah.
that.
well, if it's not in the WOD or
You
on
can change it,
our
I'm sure you can change it anyway.
we should just update the whole code if it's not citywide already.
Well, if it's just in the
But if it's just in
WOD,
the
it's
WOD,
probably
we should
not.
fix that
And there was
problem.
probably a reason for it then, but I'll check it out. I don't see why they, just guessing off the top of my head. You want me to bring something there to strike it if you're in a rush to do this, or? I mean, you can do it, so you can start here. I mean, it shouldn't slow this thing down.
It's not a time-sensitive issue, as long as we can look into it and get it on for
I
discussion.
don't know if we have any developments coming forth that it would impact or not. but-
Well, I thought he was asking now, why is he bringing it up if it's not something where you're getting ready to talk about today?
Well, we're gonna need it for the Duke Energy agreement.
It's for the Duke Energy agreement, that's
All
something
the
else.
lights that they would propose
We
are
already do
LED.
it. Okay, I got it, all right. A little slowed up, you in a rush to do this? I can do it faster, I can just bring it now, I just need their permission to bring it, and I can strike
Well,
it.
before we start construction, it probably should be. taken
Okay,
care of.
I'll try-
Yeah.
I'll bring it anyway, okay? How's that? And then you can decide. All right, super.
Guys have any further questions?
And I was gonna ask the council that here, I'm gonna go from my left to start with Councilwoman Rodriguez first.
I have no questions at this time, thank you.
Beautiful, thank you.
On this outdoor lighting, I just have a question, which, because I don't know what it means. What does meet dark sky criteria mean? On
It's
the
about-
slide, what does it mean?
The specific requirement, I can't tell you the amount of lumens,
Oh,
but
okay.
generally speaking, it's the amount of luminosity at nighttime to prevent, sea light being distracted. I'm sure there's other things that go into that, but there's a certain minimum level that you can't go beyond.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
I didn't have anything else on the
Question I had, in the estimate you have here, is this estimate based off of going on the west side of Old Post for the sidewalk, or is that,
I believe that was put in before we moved it to the west side. That
so,
was done a month and a half ago, I believe. So-
okay, so we don't know, is the movement to the west side more expensive, least expensive? What is the,
In terms of a construction cost, there will be a little bit of more cost for the retaining wall to meet the grade change.
okay,
But in terms of materials for concrete and grading, it's nothing major.
okay.
The retaining wall will be a little bit more.
You have the lighting poles here at $330,000. Duke Energy usually does that as a lease back agreement, so does this $330,000 take into account the lease back?
No, that was worst case scenario.
Okay, so theoretically, we could expect, the poles themselves are usually part of the lease back, but we're responsible for the infrastructure for that, so this is probably about half.
Yeah, that's
Again.
probably high, absolutely.
Okay.
I guess I wanted to go back, if I may.
The only, one of the concerns I've had, and you were talking about again, on the west side of Old Post, and you come to Treadway, and you're going to have the flow of pedestrian traffic cross over, down, and then cross back again.
Not necessarily crossing back.
Well, there's only one business that would be, if we don't have a map, but majority of the businesses that would be on the north or west side of those sidewalks.
Correct.
And again, they're crossing, they're going to cross over Treadway towards the Pirate Bar.
Right.
then go westbound, and then once they get to that intersection down there, they're going to cross again if the sidewalk continues on the west side.
Bayview?
Correct, yes.
Treadway, okay.
So my concern is the safety of the pedestrians. You're having them cross, especially weekends and when the boating season is in, you're going to have a lot of pedestrian traffic, and they're going to be crossing among the vehicles pulling those boats. I just see a safety concern. I don't know what it would take to see what it would cost to keep it on the north side of Treadway.
Well, generally speaking, if we had to do that on the north side, that would necessitate a permit from the Water Management District, which would add several months of review, possibly even drainage modeling, which is an extra scope. That was kind of why we had the feasibility study up front, so that we minimize cost and quicken the process, moving it on the south side so we don't fill in those swales. If we fill in that drainage system, it's going to create a hole.
Okay. I was going to ask you about that, because my thought is you still have the drainage there, which is on the north side of Treadway.
If we fill that in for the sidewalk, then it's impacting it.
The question that I had is whether or not you could make them box culverts, in other words, put the sidewalks over the top of them. You're utilizing the same space, have the water go underneath and the sidewalk over the
That
top.
still would be considered modifying the ground, and still it would need to be permitted.
Could you do a boardwalk sidewalk over the top without modifying the swell at all?
I'll have to get with my structural team. I don't see why that wouldn't be an option. It would probably be an expensive option, but it is an option.
Okay. I'm just looking at other alternatives.
Absolutely.
Because, I mean, even if cost, all things being equal, is a little bit more, but we didn't have to go back and permit it. Whether the sidewalk's concrete, we had a nice boardwalk going across there, I'd be
You're probably going from $6 a square foot to $18 a square foot.
for that little stretch there. Correct.
But to put it on the south side, you're crossing the parking lot, you're crossing Pirate Bar parking lot in and out, right? Is that
Yes,
the-
yeah.
You're crossing where Gildo's has their parking towards the end of the street, so you have pedestrians crossing, I understand what Tom is saying, they're crossing a lot of areas that cars are going in and out of.
Right.
As opposed to the Gildo's in and out one. So I understand what he's saying about pedestrian safety, that might be something to consider.
I'd prefer to pay a little bit more and have it on the other side as well, if that was an option. Personally, that's the way I feel about it.
No, I agree too. I'm more concerned, especially during the summer when the evenings are beautiful around here, that boat traffic, and the captain will share, I mean, we could have ourselves a nightmare in that general area. I'm concerned about the safety of the pedestrians.
I understand. I think that's a well-founded concern. Between traffic calming and lighting, we could make it as safe as possible with it on the south side, because there's still parking on the south side that people are using right now. So I don't really know if we'd be exacerbating the problem by extending the sidewalk on the south side. But if that's something that everybody is absolutely married to, then I will have to revise the cost estimate with that option. But up to this point, we had been proceeding with not a permit, and that would require the south side to have the sidewalk. So it would kind of change our scope at this point.
Could you possibly come around Gildog Old Post to Treadway to just in front of Pirate Bar and cross over there, and then take the sidewalk on the south side? Would that be feasible?
I suppose so, if you cut it before the swale, but how is that any safer than what we were?
Then you're crossing the.
Well-
You're still crossing there.
Yeah.
You're still crossing.
I could say something terrible right now about American intelligence on safety, but,
Right. But we're not making it worse, I guess.
well, we can't. We have to make it as safe as possible, but, I don't see how if you're gonna cross the street, you can make it safe unless you stick up flashing red lights and,
No, I mean, there's going to be a crosswalk. and it's-
I know, but I'm just saying, it's the drivers that you have to be worried
Right.
about.
But right now, you have people driving the wrong way, you have all kinds of traffic problems now as it is, boats coming in and out, so.
Well, if we still have the traffic running the wrong way, what is our police department doing about that?
They write tickets all the time. I
Is
see them
there-
in court, I see them in court all the time, so.
That's wonderful. I'm happy about that.
So-
I'm just saying.
Is
But
there
it's still
a
happening.
feasibility to shift the road?
Another issue about the American
That was not in our
ability to
portfolio.
think about safety.
I mean, and I guess the ask is, because you have the right of way on the south side of Treadway, 5 foot or whatever, to allow for the sidewalk. If you shift the road, retop the road itself, Treadway, just Treadway itself, and then reset the sidewalk on the north side of what is the old roadway essentially, but is now just flat area,
Well, that would be considered modifying.
that's still modifying the swale because you're still in the roadway.
You're disturbing the earth. Any type of regrading and maintenance activity like that, these need to be approved by the water management district. So any type of modification of the land is,
Even if it's impervious to impervious?
yeah, I mean, at the very least, they would look at it and give you a determination, but you have to run by them.
So a boardwalk may be the only way to get around the permitting issue.
If it has to be on the north side, yeah.
Just go right over the top of it.
Yeah, 'cause like I said, if you fill it in and pipe that, then that's definitely going to have to be.
That would be a better use of space as well, because you'd have your sidewalk over the top of the swell, so you're not eating up space on the other side too, because it's a narrow, I figured we'd have to stack some way to get everything through anyway, so if you have to stack the sidewalk over the swell, I don't see where that would be a problem, not only for safety, but for just management of the little bit of area there is there. It's just my opinion, I don't know if that's right or wrong, but, you know.
So would you have to, would it be considered changing the land by putting a boardwalk over the swales?
I don't believe so.
Okay, well, if you have a boardwalk, you could put up rails to keep people from jumping off the boardwalk and running down the street.
Right.
Right.
So, you know, and what would be the cost
It'd be probably triple this, I think is what.
for a boardwalk?
Oh, yeah,
Goes the sidewalk, yeah.
wood's expensive.
Well, it is now.
It was before.
Well, we can't get it from California anymore.
Yeah, it's easily triple.
Oh, I know it has.
No, I mean, the cost of a sidewalk, concrete sidewalk versus a boardwalk is easily triple. Probably more.
Is there any way around
If we want to apply for the permits, I think he's saying we can do it and do something with
Yeah,
it.
you can apply for the permits, but then you're gonna be paying permitting costs plus his engineering fees. At the end of the day, what are you gonna save?
I don't think, I think a boardwalk gives a little bit of character down there anyway, so.
I think that would, yes.
It's supposed to be efficient
I think
village,
the look
so.
would be fabulous, and the
Yes.
fact that you could put rails up on the side of it and control your walking traffic even more, as far as the safety issue goes, as far as that goes. But the look would be absolutely fabulous for the area,
Okay.
there's no doubt about it.
Because you're preventing people from cutting across there if you put a boardwalk with the rails, so I
Yeah,
think
they'll jump the rail.
Well, that's
Well,
fine, but.
then there's liability on their part. Unless the rail breaks, and then we got a problem.
So we can revise the plans to show that boardwalk and give you a rough estimate of what that increase in cost would be.
I'm curious, just what the, 3 times you said?
At least.
Well, it would be better to do it right the first time than to have to do it over again. So, I don't know. We'll have to consider it, I guess.
Do we need a motion or is this a discussion item?
I think it's a discussion, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we've got enough changes. We'll ask Matt and his team to come back in 2 weeks, bring us up to date. But with the changes, we're not ready to ask for approval.
Were we supposed to think about choosing on these lighting options that were made available to us? Is that tonight's chore?
I don't think there was a deadline on it, but the sooner the better.
Okay.
I'd be happy to take your input at any time. Tricia sent those out. You just take a look at them.
So, option 1, 2, and 3, and we can vote on it.
I've gotten one response on preferences, and so I'd be glad to have 2 or 3 or 4 responses. Once I have that, I can get it back to Matt, and he can put those costs in. And I think in 2 weeks, there's a number of other design issues that we may want to bring to kind of wrestle
Let's
with.
do them all at the same time.
At what point are we going to have a work session to actually kind of go through this with any citizens or whomever may want to actually sit down and review and talk about this in general? I'm assuming you are going to be looking for a work session or some decision points at some point. Oh, okay.
Thoughts on that, whether we should have everybody come here to a meeting or meet somewhere informal. I don't know the ideas, but yes, I would like to have a workshop, absolutely.
Well, obviously, you're going to have the tweak of that, what we just talked about in general.
Yeah.
Theoretically, the workshop will have that presentation on a board or whatever, maybe Sal's new screens, whenever he puts it together.
No pressure, Sal.
And then you're gonna have a number of options for either lighting or probably concrete patterns and or boardwalk patterns or boardwalk materials at this point, which we're probably going with standard pressure treated from our pricing perspective, because I don't see Trex going in at our price point right now. So you're gonna have a number of choices that you're gonna be looking at in the work session? Okay. So when? A month from now?
Well, with these, yeah, I'd say a month to 6 weeks from now would be a good idea.
So 4 weeks from now, he's ready for us to,
First week of March,
Okay.
our first council meeting in March, which would be the second Tuesday. Is that fast enough?
no, I'd like to get this in at some point.
He said 6 weeks.
He always says 6 weeks, he can really do it in 4.
I'm just gonna give him room to get his job.
Thank you. Okay, so yeah, we can get those revisions for the next meeting in 2 weeks, and do you guys want to have everybody just come to like the meeting in March for the workshop?
Yeah, I think we should announce it publicly and say, hey, this is our new Cody River Landing. Sorry.
Another reason for 6 weeks.
Is there like a 30-day required posting before it happens? Okay.
Uh-oh, now comes the party pooper.
The workshop, if you don't do it here, you're gonna have to advertise it to be somewhere else, and there's gonna be you understand what I mean? You can't just have all the council people go somewhere else. Okay, you can do that, okay, but it has to be appropriately advertised in a reasonable amount of time. And a place to have a pledge of allegiance and the whole 9 yards, do you understand what I mean? So for some formality, yeah, we all just can't get together for workshop, so if you do it here, the answer is just a reasonable notice. Maybe it's 2 or 3 days, whatever, you can do it at the last minute but we have a council meeting every 2 weeks, you know what I mean? And we can put a CRA meeting right behind it or before it, or you can do a workshop before it, so, you know.
Or that would be that.
Yeah, whatever be easier, you could actually do it before it, it'd be earlier, you know, so.
And then we announce it and put it on and say, hey,
So the answer is no, we don't need 30 days.
All right, I think that's all that I had on this item. Anybody else have anything? Thank you for being with us today, and I appreciate all your hard work.
Good.
Thanks.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
So I'm going to close out item 2, move on to item 3, which is going to be the Community Redevelopment Agency Board, or CRA, anti-fraud policy. I'm going to pass that over to Mr. Matthew for introduction.
As you can see, this is an anti-fraud policy as recommended by the operational audit, by the state auditor. This was finding number 12. And for the record, and you'll also see this in our response, that there is no law requiring that we do this. It's an operational audit. This is just a recommendation, as many of the things in the operational audit are. It's an operational audit. This is their recommendation. I bring it to you if you want to pass it. It's pretty straightforward. Obviously, I didn't write it. There's a couple of cities that have got together years ago and kind of used the same one. I made changes to it to fit our city. Pretty much, it's an anti-fraud policy, which says that all employees, if they see fraud, will have certain obligations to step forward in what they do. As a practical matter, what happens is, if you desire to pass this, I'll prepare a document that'll be signed by, I recommended to Mr. Duke, we had discussed it earlier, that all employees sign it, because all the employees at the city may or may not work on CRA matters, and we could also pass it as an anti-fraud policy for the city. I'll bring that up at a council meeting. And that they've read it and they understand what the process is. Pretty much what it comes down to, and I can take you through it, but pretty much if somebody sees fraud and he describes what fraud is, and you go to your supervisor, okay? If your supervisor's the problem, you go to the city manager, okay? If for some reason he's the problem, you come to me. You can change it in any way you want. I forget what city this was that kind of put this together about 3 or 4 years ago, and a bunch of cities are using this one. I think the city of Melbourne had an operational audit for their CRA last year. One of the recommendations was exactly this. You know, it's the same thing, rather routine. So this is one of the first things coming on. There'll be several things going forward about approval on some other items going forward. We might have some of those for the next, that we'll have a CRA meeting next. We'll have it 2 weeks from now. So I'll answer any questions. Otherwise, I'm just looking for a motion to approve it. It's nothing.
Just to clarify for the general public, this isn't in response to some kind of fraud in the city. This is just a recommendation to have some kind of policy in place.
Yes, there's absolutely no legal requirement for this,
Okay.
nor is any cited in the finding.
Okay.
It's a good idea.
So I like the policy that you've come up with. It looks like this is a fairly standard finding in the other audits that I've seen. A lot of cities have the same findings, so and they've adopted the same policy. So I like the way this is laid out.
Motion to adopt the anti-fraud policy.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. That closes out item 3. Motion passes. We're going to move on to old business. I'm going to start to my right this time with our Vice Mayor.
I have nothing.
I have nothing.
I'm good, thank you.
Good, thank you.
Okay. Looking for a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.